Hello, welcome back to a new video. If you're new to the channel, as always, what we're doing here is this is a 3D modeling project where we're recreating the entire land of Hyrule in the art style of the Wind Waker within the world of the Wind Waker. Of course, you know, if you've played the game, you know that all the islands of the Great Sea are really the mountaintops of old Hyrule that is now flooded beneath the Great Sea. And so what we're doing here is, you know, while you couldn't really explore Hyrule in the game, you could see some of it, but there was so much of the world that was just never fully realized. And what we're doing here is extrapolating from the islands using a map by MrJmZack, link in the description to the original source map. Is we're using all of this, trying our best to respect the lore, to recreate the land of Hyrule as you've never seen it before. This is Hyrule in the art style of the Wind Waker. So yeah, that's the project. I'm working on my spiel. I do it a little bit differently every time, seeing what works best. But yeah. So today, what we're doing is we are building a pyramid in the Gerudo Desert, and we're doing this all because of one of your comments. So this is another great reminder that I've really enjoyed seeing how many new faces have appeared on the channel recently. It means so much to see, you know, not just the views, but to see y'all comment. And I really encourage y'all leaving your ideas for new places that you want to see or different ideas that you have, you know, because I'm doing my best to respect the lore, like I said, but there's things that, you know, like I'm a pretty big Zelda fan, but there's things that might slip by me. So so it's up to y'all to comment if there's something that seems off to you. I mean, I'm doing my best over here, but I really, you know, I just say that because I want this to be kind of a community project where we can all share in the creation of this project and have a shared ownership. You know, I just know that Zelda means so much to so many people. And I've really enjoyed seeing that like as passionate as I feel about this project, it really seems like there's a lot of y'all that are just as passionate about seeing Hyrule in this world. You know, this place that you've never gotten to truly explore. Well, now you can. That's what I'm trying to do for y'all. But as I was saying, I'm making this pyramid in the Gerudo Desert all thanks to a comment from Asher3311. Thank you, Asher. I may have read this comment on a previous video, but just to reiterate here, Asher said, I think a pyramid would really fit with the cartoony art style. I just wanted to share some ideas. This project is really cool and gets my brain running at things that, you know, would be really cool to see in it. Thank you, Asher, for commenting, as always. And yeah, like I said, like, you know, this is just an example that if y'all comment down below with ideas, I see those ideas and they will inform future videos that I create. So yeah, as you know, as always, it's I want to encourage that. It's I don't know. I think this is an interesting video for other reasons as well. Because this is a design that I was figuring out as I was modeling. You know, sometimes like when I work on areas, I have kind of an idea in my back pocket, or sometimes like I'm working from like pretty clear reference, you know, whatever it is, sometimes I have a pretty clear vision. But this pyramid is like, all I knew was that I'm going to create a pyramid. You know, and how pyramids look in Zelda games, sometimes like the design, there's not a whole lot of detail necessarily. So I kind of felt like I had free reign to kind of create a design myself and kind of come up with something there. And so using textures from the Wind Temple, that was the foundation for the texture for this pyramid. But it took me a while to kind of figure out what exactly I wanted to do with the pyramid. And so I think something that you can watch in this video is that there's a lot of backtracking as we're watching this time lapse all together that you can see with, like, you know, I'm creating the pyramid and I'm trying to figure out the size, and I'm trying to figure out like, well, what should the distance be between each major step of the pyramid? You know, is it consistent? Does it keep getting, you know, bigger each time? How am I going to orient the steps around it? Are there going to be pillars and columns? You know, y'all will see that. And these are all creative decisions that I was making as I was modeling, which is fun sometimes, right? Because I think either is like, you know, that's part of art, is that sometimes you have a really clear vision and sometimes you don't, and that's just how it is. You know, but I think what's been fun about this project, and I think that y'all feel this too, is like, it feels, there are things about the Wind Waker's Hyrule that, because of what we see in the games, it feels kind of obvious what's below the ocean, even though we never really see what's below the ocean as a whole. I mean, we see that, like I said, we see Hyrule Castle, but as a whole, you know, we don't really know what's under Dragon Roost Island. We don't really know what's under Windfall. But we can kind of make connections and based on previous games and think about how locations are connected in a way that it kind of all makes sense and clicks. And I think that that's really cool that Wind Waker, even though it doesn't really show us Hyrule, like the Great Sea is designed in such a way where it, to me, I don't know, just, and maybe this is just me, but to me, it really felt obvious, some of these locations. And like, you know, not to take away from the creativity of Jacob Zachariah, because obviously that map had to fill in a lot of the blanks, and I was very thankful to have found that, because you know, for the basis of this project, there's a lot of creative decisions that he made that really, you know, helped me put things together in a really cohesive way. Like, he had to make creative decisions, but there's also things about, you know, there was a comment recently talking about Dragon Roost Island, because I brought this up in one of the videos, and I was talking about how, of course, you know, the Zelda Encyclopedia talks about Dragon Roost Island being Zora's domain, and how that's kind of controversial, right? And it's like, well, I don't think Dragon Roost Island is Zora's domain. I get how you end up there, but, and I don't know, I can't compare that to the original translation. Like, could there be something about, because the Rito live on Dragon Roost Island and they are the descendants of the Zora, is it something to say about, like, this is the Rito's home and it used to be the Zora's home? Is that what it's trying to say, which is separate from Zora's domain as a location? That's a theory, man. I don't know. I can't translate, and I don't really know if that's what it could have meant. That's just the only thing to me that makes sense about how that mistranslation could have happened, unless it's just a, you know, misunderstanding. Just because, and I want to read this comment because it's a really good example. Here it is. This is from Humanoid Machine. I got this comment 2 days ago, and I remembered it. There we go. Just had to scroll to find it. But Humanoid Machine says, I don't think there's anyone in the community that thinks Dragon Roost is Zora's domain. The only evidence for that is the presence of the Rito who bear the symbol of the Zora Sapphire. Every other piece of evidence suggests that it is the former Goron City. It looks just like Goron City on the inside. There are bomb flowers everywhere, and they're found in very few other places in Wind Waker. 3, it's an active volcano. 4, the music inside Dragon Roost Cavern is a new arrangement of the music played inside Dodongo's Cavern. They are nearly identical, except the Wind Waker version has an added drum beat. This is true. Y'all go compare the music. I know some other YouTube channels have done this in their, like, Zelda retrospectives. But if you haven't watched, like, I think like Liam Triforce's video shows this off, as well as King K's and Matthew Matos's. I don't know if they all show that off, but I know at least a couple of them point to that. And those are great Wind Waker retrospective videos. Shout out to those channels. Yeah, they're nearly identical, except the Wind Waker version has an added drum beat. The developers were actually leaving all these clues to try and tell us that this is Death Mountain. Absolutely, man. And just based on its position in the map and its size, because that's really what gets me, is like, well, if that's not Death Mountain, then Zora's domain is much higher up in elevation than Death Mountain. And thinking about that just on, you know, on a topographical scale, you know, it's not as appealing. And I have, like, for my project, I've elevated Dragon Roost Island, and I've talked about this before on the channel. Like, you know, 1 for 1, if I'm adding back in the Great Sea, I've made Dragon Roost Island a little bit taller, just so that the scale of the size of mountains makes Dragon Roost Island and Death Mountain a little bit more dramatic. So I have boosted its height a little bit. But even without that, it's the tallest island on the Great Sea, besides maybe the Tower of the Gods, you know, which isn't, that's not a mountain, that's not a topographical or geographical feature. And something I've been trying to figure out too is, like, because, you know, let me know what y'all think about this, because this is a decision that I've been thinking about, but I don't think I've discussed on the channel. The Tower of the Gods, we see it in the game of the Wind Waker rise from the bottom of the ocean, which you could infer as meaning, like, somehow it sat above Hyrule Castle or next to it. And so it's like, in this map, is, because like right now I don't have the Tower of the Gods featured in the map at all right now. just because this is a decision I hadn't quite made. But I guess I'm curious as to like, would it make sense to y'all for it to be in underwater Hyrule? And if we're making the lore decision that, you know, like I've answered several comments about this, that from a timeline perspective, what informs some of my creative decisions is that this is the world of the Wind Waker, taking place between Ocarina of Time and the Wind Waker. So right before the Great Flood, this is that world, that in that time, you know, while kind of in the prologue of the Wind Waker, right? Like during that prologue, during that tapestry section, which is beautiful, man. I could talk about that for hours too. Just the artwork in that Wind Waker prologue with the music. I think that's just a beautiful prologue. You know, just artistically, and just how much I think it's another great example of like, it says a lot without showing much. But anyway, I think that this map is basically taking place within that prologue, right before the flood happened. You know, other people have commented that like this is Wind Waker of Ganondorf 1, basically, because it takes place kind of during that time. And we see Ganon's tower next to Hyrule Castle already. So it's all this to say, I'd just like to ask y'all, what do y'all think about the Tower of the Gods in relation to this project? Is that something would that make sense to y'all to see that, you know, in Hyrule, next to Hyrule Castle? Would that be something that's also in the lake? You know, is that somewhere else? Is that something where, I don't know, is there like a new building of the Temple of Time near like Hyrule Castle Town? I haven't worked on Hyrule Castle Town. I've kind of been debating how I'm going to approach that. I do think I'd like to approach it because I've gone back and forth about, is that something that I don't have at all in the world? And I think I'd like to, you know, I waffle on it. I change my mind every now and then, but oh yeah, all this to say, how is the Tower of the Gods connected to all of this? Comment down below what y'all think, because I really haven't made up my mind on that. So this is why I invite comments. But, you know, we are getting close to the end of the video. And like I said, like I think you've seen, if you've been watching the time lapse, that, you know, speaking of waffling, I was going back and forth a lot on the design of the pyramid. But I'm happy with how it turned out. And I think that, you know, it is just one texture, just repeating over and over again. But I still really like the way it looks. But I guess let me know too if y'all have any other ideas for the pyramid and what could be added around it, or just any location that you might want to see, you know, recreated from another Zelda game. I'm definitely like, you know, because that's something that I'm open to, and other places I want to keep working on. And it's like Orden Village from Twilight Princess and bringing that into the world of the Wind Waker. That's an example. The Hidden Village from Twilight Princess as well. I'm currently working on Kakariko Village from Breath of the Wild. You know, my most recent video was working on a little bit more of Kakariko Village. And so just all these locations are fair game, you know, to work on and bring them from other Zelda games and realize them here. To me, it makes sense. And that's definitely something that, you know, that might be a little bit more controversial. And I've gotten some comments kind of about that, about like, just from a lore perspective, does it really make sense to have these villages? And my stance is like, with something like Breath of the Wild's Kakariko or Hateno Village, you know, maybe that's something that we didn't see in Ocarina of Time, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. It was just off screen, and I've kind of taken that approach before. But anyway, to wrap up the video, we're about running out of time on this time lapse. Let me just let y'all know, if y'all want to be able to support me as a filmmaker and support the creation of this project, I just launched a Patreon, and you can support me there. Find a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi page in the About section of this YouTube channel. You can find all of those links there. I would love to have y'all on board, and you get to be a part of my creative process and get access to rough cuts and behind the scenes stuff. You can also stream my music on Spotify. Any music that you've heard in this video was my music, so feel free to look me up there. So yeah, look me up on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music. That's Joe Kendrick on all major streaming platforms. That's JoeKendrick. So yeah, that's all the spiel out of the way. I'll work on my outro and refining that as well. But thank you all for watching once again. I'll see y'all in the next video. I'll let y'all go.